Tomorrow's election day, and we know for some of you out there, you're still working on finishing your ballot. That's me. We've got about 20 hours left to make up our minds. We can do it. And here to highlight a few of the high-profile races this year, please welcome back Seattle University professor Marco Lowe. Welcome.
Thank you.
Have you already marked your ballot?
It's in the envelope and signed. I have not dropped it off yet.
Okay, you're way ahead of me. All right, so you can give us some help. Seattle mayor's race,
Yeah.
Jenny Durkan versus Carrie Moon.
I think some of the people in the downtown community are betting it's going to be Jenny Durkan with a walk. I think it's going to be a little closer. Very progressive thrust going through the country right now, and you're also watching two really clear candidates for which side of the Seattle political spectrum, which are both very progressive. Right. Are they on? So I think it's going to be a closer race than most expect. And
they've taken a little bit of a hit lately, and can they relate to those that don't make as much money? Because both are quite rich.
Yes. Homelessness is the top issue, and both are millionaires. So I think that is a legitimate question the press is asking, but when you really watch somebody get into office, how they can handle the office or not is really about their talents and skill sets and the team they hire.
Doesn't necessarily equate how much money they have. But okay, the King County Sheriff's race, John Urquhart versus Mitzi Johan Connect. First of all, we should say there have been some allegations Sheriff Urquhart is facing. There
have been charges of rape and sexual assault against Sheriff Urquhart. He has gone through investigations that have cleared him, but these are incredibly serious charges. And in America, this whole discussion is playing out right now as well nationally. So that's happening. We're also watching just a sheriff's race that normally is a little bit down ballot elevate. And earlier polls that had John Urquhart way out there, I would suspect that race is incredibly tight right now.
And we should say that he has been quite upfront and has not shied away at all.
Taken and passed lie detector tests, and I think 3 investigations have cleared him. But it's just it's hard. It's a very complicated issue that is hard to just dismiss. But at the same time, I think he has discussed it as much as anybody could.
And so, do you think this is going to be then quite a bit tighter than it would have looked just a month ago?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is the one, Legislative District 45, Jin Young Lee versus Manka Dhingra, and you say this control of Washington is on the line. Crucial
it is.
One.
The Democrats have the House and the governor's mansion, and the Senate is 1 vote from going to a Democratic majority. And the Republicans there have done an incredibly good job of stopping anybody else from getting any legislation through that they didn't like. So if the majority goes back to the Democrats in the Senate, you'll have all 3 levels of government and a more progressive agenda going through Olympia.
They get it all at that point. And this has been a costly race for
7 days out.
For those running.
$8.5 million has been spent together on both sides, and there's going to be more spent in the final 7 days. So this will far and away break any record for a legislative race.
And more than the mayor's race, then?
Oh yes, I think more than double the Seattle mayor's race. And think about it, Seattle, state of Washington, billions and billions in the budget. All parties are playing very hard to try to hold that seat or flip it to the Democrats.
Okay, Seattle City Attorney, is that race closed? That's Pete Holmes versus Scott Lindsay.
There's not a lot of polling, but I have not seen a race this contested since originally Pete Holmes was elected himself. So you're seeing 2 different candidates. They're not terribly different when you look at them, but I think you could say Scott Lindsay is going to take a little bit harder line on the encampments and homelessness downtown. Pete Holmes is looking more at a diversion and other process. But again, we haven't seen polling, and I'm having trouble seeing, is the voter really engaged on this at the level that you would have to fire Pete Holmes, who has been there now for 2 terms?
And it seems like some of these races are coming down to that issue of homelessness, which we referred to in the beginning.
And again, Scott Lindsay's done a very good job of drawing a clear line between him and Pete Holmes on this, and we'll see where the voters come out. We're going to see where Seattle's head is in many races, the mayor's race and the city attorney's race, once we get through Election Day.
Okay, and Seattle City Council Position 8, that's John Grant versus Teresa Mosqueda.
2 very progressive candidates again. You have John Grant, who ran against Councilmember Burgess last time and lost by quite a bit, came back again. Teresa Mosqueda is coming out of the King County Labor Council. She's actually lectured my class. Very charismatic, very smart. John Grant has a very interesting position. He was endorsed by The Stranger and the Seattle Times, which we haven't seen before. And there's a lot of theories out there on why that happened and if it really says what it looks like it might say or not. But it's a really tight race, and both are very, very strong candidates.
So as we're looking to 2018 in terms of the president's unpopularity right now and the House races, what are we looking at?
People who really watch this are showing that President Trump's numbers in the past, when President Clinton had them or President Obama, really led to a very tough House race for them to hold on to the House in their first midterm election. I think we might see that now. The one challenge is the Republicans have spent decades redistricting to make seats much safer for them in some key states. So we'll see if that can hold off what looks like what could be a Democratic tide next year.
So when we are trying to figure out, especially last minute voter here, I'm trying to figure out where's the best place to turn when I'm kind of weeding through everything.
I think the voter guide is incredibly good. They really put a lot of time into it. Next, I would say endorsements of different papers or organizations, so that you're not just getting even what you might think is where your values are. I think it's good that we all challenge our values and read the arguments between the sides. So we have many organizations that are labor, environmental, or business that make endorsements, just as we have papers and radio stations and things like that. And
one thing I understand from the voter guide is you have to read that knowing that they put in there what they wanted to be said. That's not necessarily it's all been vetted.
Yeah. That's a good point, but I would also say they really don't want the article that says, Marco Lowe lied in the voter guide, and because that'll happen. I tend to find them very helpful and even if I know the race and know the candidates, I really don't find lies. What I really wonder is how much time they spent writing it, because it's really good and really has to distill down their campaign in a few words.
All right, that's what I'll be doing tonight. Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Remember to make sure your vote is counted, mail your ballot, or drop it off at any Dropbox location by 8 p.m. And we've put a link to locations on New Day's website. All right, up next, Evening reveals their 2017 Best of Western Washington winners. We check in with Michael King next.